All right, equations of a circle. Before we move forward, we need to know what the equation of a circle looks like. So this is what you would be expected to fill in if you're asked to write the equation of a circle. So the part that you are focused on is going to be H, K, and R. So as is shown here, H is going to tell you whether or not it's movement left or right, K is up or down, and then R is your radius. Where students typically get the problem wrong is they do not recognize that radius is actually squared when it's written in the equation of a circle. So pay attention to that. What you also need to pay attention to is that H and K will represent the center of your circle. And also, the formula has a negative sign in there, or a minus sign, sorry. So whenever you have to pay attention to your signs as well. So let's just go through some examples to see the variety of ways that you will see problems presented to you. All right, so you're asked to identify the center and the radius if you're given a graph. So if I'm given a graph, the center is typically shown with a dot in the middle of the circle. That's why it's called the center. So in this instance, this should be easy. All you have to do is just find your coordinates. So if I am on my x-axis, I'm moving over to the left. And when I'm going to the left, I'm going to have a negative sign in front of my number. So I went to the left, -3. So that is on my x-axis, like I stated a few minutes ago. So therefore, the first part of my ordered pair represents x. So that's where I will put the -3. And then to get to the center, I have to go down. When you're going down on the graph, again, it's indicated by a negative sign. So therefore, I went down 2, and my y value is now going to show as -2. That's it. When you are given a graph, because again, this is your y-axis, which is going up and down, and that's always your second space in your ordered pair, the y part is, and then x is always the first one. And it tells you it's going left and right. All right, so now that we see what our center is, oops, I didn't mean to get rid of that, but that's okay. All right, so what we want to look for now is our radius. Well, the radius is, what is it, how many units does it take to go from the center to the edge of the circle? It doesn't matter which direction you're going in. So if I'm counting to the right, 1, 2, I hit the edge of the circle. If I'm going up, 1, 2, I still hit the edge of the circle. So I really don't have to go through and do it to the left and to the right, up and down, bottom, sorry. It tells me that my radius based off of what I did counting units is going to be 2. That's it. So that's when you're given a graph. Let's try one more like that. If I am still trying to identify my center, well, this should be easy. If I look at my X and Y axis, well, they both meet at 0. So that's the origin. This is called the origin. If you ever hear someone say your center is at the origin, that means your center is at 0, 0. All right, so your radius again, you're just counting in any direction you want to count in because the radius is going to be the same no matter which direction you go in. So let's try going down. Units 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Where your radius, even though we went down, we would not put a negative number. Radius is a distance, so it will never be negative. And you can also just look at it here and see that that's going to be at 5 units to the right. So you can, or if you look up, it's still 5 units. So it's however you're visualizing it. Okay, let's go to the next example where we're trying to write the equation of a circle, but this time we're given information. So this is why you would need to understand what the formula looks like for writing an equation of a circle. So let's recall it is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to r squared. So what you are trying to do is substitute in for your h, k, and your r. So recall again that your center is h and k. So they just told us in this problem that my center is -15 and 1. So I can just go ahead and rewrite The x and the y never changes, so you always leave that in your equation. So x minus, well, this has a negative sign here, so negative 15, and then all of that is squared plus y, this is my y this time, is 1, I'm sorry, y minus, and then your k is the 1 squared, and r is your radius, which is 3. Well, that 3 has to be squared according to our equation of a circle. So now if I simplify this, my final answer will be x plus 15 squared plus y minus 1 squared is equal to 9. You cannot leave it in this form. You have to simplify it. So again, this is what your equation of a circle will look like based off of the given information. All right, let's do another one just like that. This time, my center is going to be 0, 0. So actually, let me bring this down so you can see this equation of a circle. And I'm just substituting what I know. If I ever have a 0 for my h and my k, I do not have to notate that. All I have to do is just simply write x squared. I do not have to write x minus 0 squared. You don't have to worry about doing it that way. So I'm going to write x squared plus, and then y, the k is also 0, so y squared is equal to, well, radius squared simply means taking what's given and multiplying it times itself another time. Or you might see it as square root of 5 raised to the second power. It means the same thing. Well, what you'll learn later on in algebra 2 is that's the inverse. So if you can raise it to the second power, you just get rid of the radical. What's left over is your answer, 5. So for those people who are like, whoa, what just happened? So this is the same if I multiply it times itself, because that's what r squared means. It's going to be square root of 5 times 5, which is 25. Well, what's the square root of 25? Simply 5. Same answer. So this is my final answer in simplified form when I'm writing the equation of a circle. All right, what if I am asked to identify the center and the radius, but they gave me the equation of a circle? I just break it apart. So I already know, again, this represents h. So I know that that's going to be 2. And if there's nothing next to my y here, that means that is 0. What's shown here is radius squared. So r squared is 9. So how do I get rid of the square? I take the inverse, which is the square rooted. So if I take the square root of both sides, I have r is equal to plus or minus 3. Well, I know I can't have a negative distance because that's what radius is going to be, a distance. So it's just simply going to be 3. So that's my answer for my center and my radius. If I am looking at part B, well, I can see that my center is going to be 0 for x, because again, there's no h here. So that's going to be 0. And then for my y, for my k, I have to pay attention because this is really y minus k. Well, what happened to the sign there? That means that I had to have had a negative k. Negative times negative would give me a positive. So instead of that being a positive 3, I actually have a negative 3. And then for my radius, well, again, this is simply radius squared is 7. And to get rid of this square, I just take the square root. What I do to one side, I do to the other. So guess what? The radius is the square root of 7. So this is my radius, and this is my center. Okay, moving on. Now, example 4, this one will cause you to recall formulas. So if you don't remember the formulas, go ahead and take notes right now. You're going to have to use your midpoint formula as well as your distance formula. So for your midpoint formula, you're basically taking the average of your x values and then taking the average of your y values. That's why you have a comma there. So it's 2 separate things happening. For your distance formula, Instead of using D for distance, just use R, which represents radius. But remember, your equation of a circle asks you to square the radius. So remember that when you're solving. Okay, so if I am given the diameter, the first thing that I want to do is I want to find the center, because my diameter, if I can remember that, is when it's a chord that's going through the center of the circle. Well, for my equation of a circle, I need to know the radius. I don't need to know the diameter. So what I would do is use the midpoint formula. When I use the midpoint formula, it might be helpful to just go ahead and label what you have. So my first coordinates, I have a x sub 1, a y sub 1, and then I have an x sub 2 and a y sub 2. So now I just substitute it into this formula. When I do that, I see that I have, for the first one, 13 plus 9 divided by 2. So this is going to be my x coordinate, or h if you're looking at it as hk for your center. And then for my y, or k, I am going to take the y sub 1 and the y sub 2, which is negative 2 plus negative 10, and divided by 2, because of course I'm still using the midpoint formula. And the first one, then my answer is 22 divided by 2, which is 11. And then the second one, I have negative 2 plus negative 10, which is negative 12. Negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6. So again, the purpose of doing this was to find my center, which is HK, or if you want to look at it as XY, if that helps you. So I know that my center is going to be 11, negative 6. Now, in order to write the equation of a circle, I can go ahead and do part of my equation. I can go ahead and do the x minus, well, I know that the h part is 11 squared plus y minus, but there's a negative there, so this is going to turn into a plus, 6 squared is equal to, well, guess what? I need to figure out what my radius is. In order to find my radius, that's when I use my distance formula, but instead of using D, I'm going to use R. And that formula tells me to take, and it doesn't matter if I want to use this ordered pair or if I want to use the other one, just stick with one or the other. So I'm going to replace my X with 13. My H is my center, which is 11. And I'm told to square that and then add it to my Y, which is negative 2, minus my K, which is negative 6, which means this is really going to turn to a positive 6. And I am squaring that. So now R is going to equal, if I simplify this, 13 minus 11 is 2, and then that 2 squared is 4, plus negative 2 plus 6 is 4, and then 4 squared is 16. So R is equal to the square root of 20. But I don't want R. I want R squared. So again, that simply means I'm multiplying it times itself. If I ever have a radical times itself, it's always going to end up being whatever the radicand is. So R squared is simply 20. And so therefore I can complete my equation of a circle because now I have everything that I needed. That's my final answer when I'm writing it and writing the equation of a circle. So back to this part, 20 times 20, and it's all under radical, is going to be the square root of 400. And if you take the square root of 400, that's where that 20 is coming from. And lastly, let's do the exact same thing. This time, again, we're given a diameter. We can choose any one we want, but the first thing we want to do is the midpoint formula, which tells us to take the average of our x values. So I am going to take, well, let's label it so that might help somebody. And then this is x sub 2, y sub 2. Take my x's, add them, and divide by 2. So 1 plus negative 1. And then for my y, I'll just go ahead and do them together. My y, I'm going to take 8 plus 0 and divide it by 2. And when I simplify this out, I end up with 0 divided by 2, which is simply 0, and 8 divided by 2, which is simply 4. So that's my center. Recall, even though you're looking at it as X and Y, this is really HK, which represents my center. So if I want to go ahead and start my writing my equation of a circle, I can. Since my H is 0, then all I have to do is just write X squared. I don't have to write X minus 0 squared. Plus Y, and then I see that my K is a positive 4, so minus 4, it's going to be the opposite sign, squared equals, again, I have to try to find my R. So in order to find my R, let's just go ahead and use the distance formula, which tells me to take either one. I'm going to take this ordered pair this time, but I can take either one as long as I stick with the same one. So my X value is -1. And then my formula tells me to subtract it from my center, which is 0. And then I'm supposed to square it, add it to my Y, which is 0, and then subtract it from my K, which is 4. And again, I'm squaring this. Simplify, R is going to be, and don't forget your square root. That's what a lot of students forget. I'm going to take that 0 out, and I'm left with -1 squared, which is simply -1 times -1, which is +1, plus, take this 0 out, -4 times -4 is +16, and R becomes the square root of 17. I don't want R, I want R squared, which means I would have to square both sides. That gets rid of this. And R squared is simply the radicand, which is 17. So I am going to take that information, place it in my equation of a circle, and bam, I am done. If this video was helpful at all, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that thumbs up.